Hello and welcome to another edition of the Door 14 Hockey Podcast. I'm your host Marty alongside John
Hello.
and Aaron.
Hey,
No Dave tonight. He has other commitments, I think, this evening. I think that's mostly looking after his children. Um, Nice little festive jingle there as the episode was opening. We
See
are
that? Our graphic designer has clearly been hard at work once again.
Yeah, nothing special, but yeah, I added a nice little Christmas jumper effect to the logo
yep.
for anybody who's watching on the YouTube.
And also the sleigh
video.
bells. I'm a big
The
fan of the
sleigh
sleigh
bells,
bells.
yeah.
The sleigh bells, yeah. We're currently in the middle, tail end of the festive period. As of recording this, we are New Year's Eve. As of listening to this or watching this, it'll be New Year's Eve. So we are less than 24 hours away from a new year. Um, so I think what we'll do is though we'll wait. I'll wait and ask you guys all about your hockey-themed Christmas presents until later. We'll leave that for our overtime segment. So in the meantime, I suppose just to ask, I suppose really, John, we'll start with you. You're in a different setting there. You look like you're in a Canadian lodge of some description, and I think you look like you've added on an additional like checkered shirt, like
Oh
lumberjack
yeah,
shirt, just to make.
I'm in the flannel. I'm getting right into the feel of this. Yeah, so I'm in the house in Scotland. So my wife and I we've been here for Christmas. And yeah, it's been good fun. I was gonna say that I've missed loads of games, or I was supposed to have missed loads of games, but I haven't. I think so far I've only missed one game. Um, and yeah, Christmas was great. I've eaten far too much, and what with being in Scotland, especially today, I've eaten far too much deep fried food. So yeah,
Did you have a deep fried Mars bar?
I didn't, but I had almost everything else that was deep fried on the menu.
So you've had like 3 deep fried haggis then?
I've had a jumbo haggis.
Jumbo
It's-
haggis.
It's a different thing altogether, but it's a jumbo haggis. It's a lot of haggis, deep fried, and it's just artery clogging yumminess. And I paired it with something a little bit maybe left field, and I went with deep fried chicken pakora.
I don't.
I, who knew that existed? Just only in Scotland, I guess, is the only way
Absolutely.
to really, only way to really
What's,
put
what's
that.
been the best thing that you've ever had? This is going completely off topic here, but what's the best thing that you've had that has been deep fried?
I can't go past the deep fried Mars bar. Used to have them at school. It was one of the chippies down in the town where I went to high school. They did the deep fried Mars bars, and yeah, there's a reason I left high school about 22 stone.
See, I've only had one deep fried Mars bar, and I think one of the chippies round here done it once, and I saw it on Just Eat. So the problem was that you order it on Just Eat, and then it's
not
fried,
fresh.
and then you get it half an hour later, and it's cold, and it wasn't.
As
it
an
wasn't
adult-
a great experience.
As an adult, I would strongly recommend never having one sober.
Okay.
They just don't appeal to me at all. They just sound everything about it just sounds gross. I'm not a fan of Mars bars, first off, so I don't eat Mars bars. So a deep fried version of the thing would just be
You know, one of these
worse.
weird people that likes a bounty, are you?
No, I hate Bounty as well. No,
That's
I'm
all
not
right.
a fan.
We
It's
can
the
still
one-
be friends then.
Yeah, Bounty's the
There's a
obviously
reason why they're always the last in the celebrations.
I was just about to say
Yeah.
it's festive period, so the festive period you always get big boxes of chocolates people will give you out, and we've got celebrations. And I know fine rightly in a couple of months' time, whenever I go to the celebrations box, be like, oh, is there anything left? It'll be all the bounties or the caramel, what you call those caramel, Galaxy caramels, because neither me or my wife eat Galaxy caramels either. We don't
Yeah,
like
they're a
caramel.
bit grim.
Yeah, they're grim. So they're always left. Aaron's sitting there going, what? Are you crazy? I love those.
Caramel, chocolate, caramel. What's not to like?
And
Galaxy
Aaron,
chocolate in particular. It's
Aaron,
grim.
how about you? How's your festive period been so far?
That's been great. Always good to see friends and family and have a few wee drinks. This is our last Christmas in this house.
Yep.
We're moving in a couple of weeks' time. So we're now living in boxes around boxes. I feel like like that episode from Friends where not Joey, it's Ross and Chandler make
Yep.
someone makes a box for it. That's pretty much what our house is like at the moment. And I was telling John earlier, I decided to pour myself a 0% Guinness because I'm responsible, and had to pour it in a normal glass because idiot here decided to pack. It was a good idea to pack all of the pint glasses. But that's a thing.
So Aaron's on 0% Guinness. John, you're on the full 100% alcohol
Yeah, for the
beer.
first time,
100%
really,
alcohol.
No,
hundred
Was
percent
he a
alcohol.
doctor?
Yeah, yeah. So this is not an ad at all, but my sister-in-law sent me some Bayonet Brewing Index Double IPA, which it turns out is for those on YouTube. There you are. Turns out is 8%. So I make no guarantees
Ah,
about how the end of this podcast is going to go. I've also made a point that I can very
Yeah.
quickly make my hands to the whiskey.
and I am on tea.
Get your hand quickly on the bleep button for John talking about stuff later on.
As the episode goes on, we'll start thinking about using that button more and more as he starts to kind of start throwing out the expletives. Um, guys,
What about
so
you,
Dave-
Marty? How
No,
was?
hold
What
on, what
about you?
about you?
Yeah, what about you?
Yeah, it was. It's been okay. Yeah, it's been fine. I think I make no. I think everybody knows I'm not a big massive fan of Christmas anyway, or in the festive period. But it's been nice just being off work, getting a bit of a break. And yeah, it's been a lot of socializing and doing stuff with family and stuff. And not saying it's too much, but I like to kind of have my own time to kind of chill as well. So it's been busy. We were out at the Odyssey. We were down at sorry, not the Odyssey. What hasn't been called that in a while. We're down at the SSE today for the skate, the public skate sessions. It was pretty fun. It was pretty good, and it was very busy. But yeah, great crack as usual.
You were there yesterday
and
as well for your second viewing of Spider-Man,
Spider-Man.
as well.
I was.
Ooh.
Although we went local yesterday, we stayed at the cinema that's like literally 2 minutes from our house. Not even 2 minutes. Like you walk,
that's
you know,
right,
just at the
okay.
bottom of our street. There's a cinema. So we went to that one last night, but it was good. Yeah, it was very good. And Spider-Man again, second time around, just as good as the first time. Yeah,
I feel like if we
Uh,
start going down that route, we'll not talk about hockey.
exactly. So let's get stuck into hockey. It has been an eventful 2 weeks since our last recording, and we will try and round up all the stuff that's been going on and all the stuff that's currently happening across the UK, especially given the current circumstances around COVID and everything that's going on. But we'll get stuck into that in period one. To start with, we will start off with what we always do and do a quick rundown of the league standings, both here in the Elite League as well as across the pond in the NHL. So starting here in the Elite Ice Hockey League, Sheffield Steelers still sit top with 20 games played and 33 points. Cardiff Devils are in second with 21 games played and 27 points. Belfast Giants are in third with 17 games played and 24 points. Guildford are in fourth with 19 games played and 19 points. Manchester are in fifth with 18 games played and 18 points. Nottingham are in sixth with 16 games played and 16 points. Coventry in seventh with 16 games played and 14 points. Dundee in eighth with 17 games played, 13 points. Glasgow in ninth with 15 games played and 12 points. And Fife Flyers in 10th place with 17 games and 10 points. So again, bits and pieces have changed, mostly around that middle section. You know, that kind of second to fifth positions have kind of changed slightly since our last recording, but still holding on to that top spot is Sheffield Steelers, temporarily for now anyway. John, let's start with you. Again, not much changing. We've had a bit of a chat about this in our previous episode. You know, Sheffield's looking strong there at the top, followed by in second and third place with the Giants, and Cardiff kind of swapping those places around a bit. What's your thoughts so far coming this? Well, we'd say coming up towards the middle section, I suppose, because we're coming out of festive period, but we've still got technically 4 months of hockey left. What's your thoughts there?
Well, first thing, with everything that's been going on, we've certainly got a lot more than 4 months of hockey left, if we have 4 months of hockey left. Looking at the table, yeah, you said it, Sheffield are sitting top, sitting clear. I don't think at this point anyone with games in hand on them can catch them if they make up those games. Now, obviously, that doesn't include games that those people have against them. That would obviously change things around a little bit. We obviously know that we've had a missed game against them because of COVID and everything that's happened there. The Giants are making their way up. It's been good to see. I think we're now on a 6-win streak over the last few weeks. Obviously with gaps, with going into the COVID protocol, whatever that is in the Elite League. None of us know. Probably pick a protocol out of the M&S bag, and that's what the Elite League COVID protocol is. Guildford, I'm quite happy to see still sitting mid-table. They started strong, they've dropped off a little bit, and still to have sort of point production, 1 point per game, is, I think, pretty good for them at this point. I think they'd be quite happy to see that. And then coming into the run Towards the second half of the season, I'd like to see them stay solidly in that middle. But I mean, the top of the table is looking pretty solid with the sort of 3-4 teams up there. Bottom of the table also looking pretty solid. With the teams that are down there, which is really unfortunate. You talk about problems with games with COVID. At this point, the Clan are still going to be playing this season games next season. If they continue on, it seems to be every team that gets put into the protocol has a game against the Clan, and they are getting to the stage that come March, they are going to be playing 2 or 3 games every weekend, if not 1 or 2 in the middle of the week as well. It's getting preposterous for them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean that situation. We'll talk about this a bit more detail in period one, but you're right. It looks like it's going to be how they're going to fit all of these missing games. How they're going to fit in. Where is they going to find the time to fit them in? I suppose obviously given the fact that they have a bit more, I suppose they have a bit more freedom now around their own ice. I suppose and they can kind of obviously make their own, dates and stuff. I suppose helps. But again, you're right. It's going to be interesting to see how they kind of pick up on that. Aaron, coming over to you, John's kind of already mentioned it a bit there, but obviously we've got that bottom half. So from say position 6 from Nottingham Panthers having an awful season this year. Obviously they haven't been able to. They obviously haven't been able to pick their season up at all. It's just been awful. But obviously those 3 bottom teams, Dundee, Glasgow, and Fife. The 3 Scottish teams really struggling. Your thoughts and your
But
take?
as John said, unfortunately, that's just the norm. Unfortunately, it's such a horrible thing to say, and I feel so bad for saying it. But looking at the bottom of the table, the Nottingham Panthers are the only ones that feel out of place.
Mm,
So they
yep.
do. I would love to see the Clan and the Dundee Stars get a wee bit more. Clan, I would suspect a bit more, obviously from them, but they're having a bit of a rough time, as you say, with their ice and getting those games in. So that will change for them if they get the games in. Um,
Yeah,
but you go ahead.
yeah. I suppose with the only thing I would say about Glasgow is obviously, we talked about the fact that they did start a month or so later than everyone else, but they've played 15 games. I mean that's 1 game less than the nearest the nearest two
Oh,
game like Nottingham and
yeah.
Coventry have only played 16 each. And
Mm-hmm.
there is a bit of I suppose a bit of an argument there where you could say they're definitely struggling. You can see they're struggling with having played the 15 games, only racking up 12 points from those 15 games.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just seems like it's a difficult game, a difficult season that's going on there. But and as I say, we will talk about it more in period one because we have a lot more to talk about just in relation to what's been going down.
It is an interesting season though, because so we've got Panthers below the middle point, and we've got the Steelers right at the top. Like that's a bit different. So it is.
It is indeed. It is. We're gonna look over. If it's okay with you guys, I'm gonna switch over to across the pond and look at the NHL standings, and we'll take a look at the Eastern Conference, the Metropolitan Division first. So sitting top place there is Washington with 32 games played and 45 points, followed by Carolina in second place with 29 games played and 43 points, and the New York Rangers sit in third with 31 games and 42 points. In the Atlantic Division, then we have Tampa Bay sitting top with 31 games played and 46 points. Toronto are sitting in second with 30 games played and 42 points, and Florida sitting in third with 30 games played and 42 points. Wildcard spots there currently are held by Pittsburgh and Detroit. Philadelphia just sitting there third in the wildcard spot, so just slightly out
Yeah,
of contention at the moment, but
creeping up
still
there. That's better than it was last time. We were
better
we
than it
were
was.
well below.
And we've still got loads of games still to come within the NHL. We're getting towards that point of the NHL season where we start to kind of our ears pick up more and we start
Leaning
to kind
forward.
of watch more because we're kind of more interested because it's starting to look at the wild card spots as you can tell. Looking across the other side of the country, looking at the western side of things in the Central Division, sitting top there, St. Louis with 32 games played and 41 points, followed by Minnesota in second with 30 games played and 40 points, and Nashville in third with 31 games played and 39 points. In the Pacific Division, then sitting on the top there is Vegas with 33 games played, 42 points. Anaheim in second with 33 games played and 41 points, and Calgary in third with 28 games played and 36 points. The wildcard spots are held by Colorado and Edmonton. Then again another interesting season so far in the NHL, and again a lot of things going down over the course of this last 2 weeks, especially even not even the last 2 weeks. In the space of this last week, a lot of stuff happening, and there's about three stories that specifically that I'm going to touch upon in period two because I think it's going to have a massive impact on the NHL moving forward. Currently, and one of those does affect the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I kind of want to give my opinion on that whenever we get to that stage, period two. But I'll come to you guys. I mean, John, we talked about it already, and I'm sure, and Dave's not here. We've got Minnesota sitting in second. He's happy. We've got 2 games in hand over St. Louis, with only 1 point behind them, so they're looking good still. Nashville in third, though. Happy man there.
Yeah, I mean the only problem that we've got there is that games played differential, especially with Colorado sitting on our heels, only a few points behind, but with a number of games in hand. They're sitting with 4 games in hand over Nashville. In fact, they're sitting with a number of games in hand to the teams above them. So I would expect them to start to play into that top three. Nashville, they're hit and miss this season. We're either getting absolutely great wins or we're getting absolutely devastating losses. The closest one was last night after COVID, coming out of COVID protocol, or the COVID break, really, that the league took. We ended up with a 5-3 loss to the Caps, which, I mean, a loss to the Caps is a loss to the Caps. It's a loss to the Great Eight, but it's I will remain surprised if we are not relying on a wild card spot to get through to playoffs, and if we don't get to playoffs, let's just say I'll not be drowning my sorrows. I'll not be wasting the good whiskey.
Well, that's. I mean, it's fair enough to say. I mean, I mean, they seem to have came off a kind of a rough start to their season. I guess, and I think there was like we kind of jumped around at the start of the very early doors of the season. They seem to really struggle to take form, but they seem to have definitely turned things around a bit more in this coming up towards this festive period and stuff. And
You just
it'll be
need to
interesting
lose
see.
10 games in a row like the Flyers, and then any win, you're like, yes!
10
Yes,
games in a row,
obviously.
then we're clearly going to win the Stanley Cup. Yep.
The,
That's exactly how it works.
if we go, do a callback to the movie we were talking about earlier at the start of the podcast, Spider-Man. What is it that MJ says in that movie? Is that if you set your expectations low, then you can't be disappointed. Is that what it was she
Yep.
says, or something like that? So
Mhm.
I always go into every season with Toronto being that way. So
Low expectation, low disappointment.
that's it. Exactly. And with that cheery thought, guys, I think we're going to get stuck into period one. As I say, we've got a lot of stuff to catch up on. I know we want to have a full discussion around a couple of different bits and pieces. And I say I've got more for period two as well around the current NHL situation. So let's get stuck into our main show. All right, period one is a roundup of all of these stories from local coverage, I suppose, from around the UK. I'm actually going to start this. We're going to actually start the period one, actually, John, with your side over to you first, if that's okay. And this is obviously news that has came out from the Nottingham Panthers since our last recording.
Yeah, so this was the sad news that a few days ago, a couple of days after Christmas, that Gary Moran, their former general manager, unfortunately passed away on early morning on the 27th of December. The last podcast we spoke very briefly about the fact that Gary had made the difficult decision to step down as GM of the Panthers, and clearly things were a lot worse health-wise than even what he was sort of letting out to people, and unfortunately through a short battle with illness, Gary passed away, and will be deeply lost. I mean, Gary's a character who, I mean, I've been following the Elite League and whatever guys it's been for probably about 14 years now, and Gary's one of those people that potentially could be polarizing with sort of some views on sort of business sense and the business end of the game. But as far as it came to supporting the game in Britain, there was probably no one bigger, no one more important than Gary, and he will be incredibly missed within the elite league and within hockey in the UK. So we just want to send our well wishes to Gary's family and friends, and to everyone at the Nottingham Panthers as well, as they deal with this. It's worth noting that there was an impeccably looked at moments remembrance at the game that night between the Nottingham Panthers and the Sheffield Steelers, which also happened to be the Premier Sports game of the week as well. So it was great that he was able to be remembered on that platform as well.
Yeah, indeed. In true hockey tradition, we won't do a minute sense. We'll do a stick tap to Gary, as you say, polarizing figure at times, but no doubt could never be argued. His passion, his determination, and just his sheer love, I suppose, for the Nottingham Panthers was always there, and that shone through. And I think he was definitely a figure that will be missed massively within that
No
organisation.
matter what, still part of the hockey family.
Indeed, indeed. Guys, so let's get a look at a roundup of stories and everything else that's going on. Just kind of clear things up in terms of what we're looking at the moment in terms of the situation here in UK. I was about to say Northern Ireland, but no, it's the UK as a whole and the Elite League as a whole. If you're listening from outside of the UK, just to kind of put it in context, the Elite League is made up of 4 nations across the United Kingdom. Northern Ireland, Scotland, England, and Wales. Each of those nations have, devolved governments. They have their own say in terms of how things are governed within their own area. So in terms of things like COVID protocols, and in terms of things that are happening from a community sense and from a political government sense, each area will have a different say on terms of restrictions in relation to how things are happening within the community. For example, in Northern Ireland, our restrictions now are in place that basically restricts the number of people gathering in indoors and outdoors and all that sort of stuff. But one of the big things, and I suppose it's the first point we're going to look at, guys, is that two of the devolved nations, both Wales and Scotland, have brought in I suppose, rules is the best way to describe it, that state that indoor events have to be restricted to either, I think if I'm correct, Cardiff is something like 50 people or something like that, or
Well,
sorry,
so
Wales is like Wales
Northern Ireland. So, or sorry, not Northern Ireland. That 8% really starting to kick in, guys. The
I can't wait till the end of the podcast.
it's going to be great. Sorry, Wales. Sorry, this is a really serious topic. Wales, essentially all sports are behind closed doors, with the exception of the players and the staff that are required to sort of carry out the sport. So that means the players, the referees, and the team support staff go in, the doors stay locked. Scotland, slightly more different in that they are allowing up to 200 fans. So this is, you'll get your players, you get your referees, you get your off-ice officials, and all the rest of it, and then you're allowed 200 fans. Now,
Insert
different
John
teams have
Fife
got
joke
different...
here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, insert Fife joke here, where before this all came in, they didn't even get 200 one night. Now, some teams are looking at this differently from others. I haven't seen any real news coming out of Fife, because there's no real news ever comes out of Fife. Glasgow
comments
have...
Isn't that right?
well, Glasgow have taken the opportunity to cancel a couple of games. Not cancel them, postpone them, and put them in with the other 8,000 games that they're going to have to play in March. Dundee, though, have been really polarising to their fan base. So the Scottish rule states, obviously, there's 200 fans. They have come out and said that they will be selling 200 tickets to their next home game. They will only be for home fans. They will all be priced as adult tickets at £20 plus a handling fee, which I think puts them at just about the most expensive ticket in the Elite League. And away fans will be refused entry, even if they do manage to buy one of these 200 tickets, as only one side of the DIA, so essentially the away section, will not be open to allow fans in. They've also put in place different measures for their season ticket holders about potentially keeping that to the end of the season to use on what they would hope would be a playoff game that they can make up on that's not covered by their season ticket, or to get a refund, or to put it forward as a partial down payment for the next season ticket. A lot of people, the Dundee fan base has been back and forward on this one and whether they think these are the right ways to go about it. A lot of them are saying, well, why don't you give us the option to get the webcast for that game? So, I mean, they're not wrong there. But then England, essentially nothing has changed. So all the other teams, in fact, less than 3 days ago, 4 days ago, in fact, I believe that Sheffield had 9,500 fans in their arena. It was essentially a sellout at the Motorpoint Arena. I think it's been renamed.
No, it's now called the. It's a weird name. It begins with like a U or something. I can't remember. It's
not
really
the
odd
Utilitia Arena or
name.
one of
Something
those
like
ones.
that. Yeah, yep.
So anyway, so whatever it's called now, they had 9,500 fans. Similarly, the following night, this was a whole home away situation, which I'm sure we're going to come on to talk about in a minute. In Nottingham, same thing. Not quite a sellout, I don't think, but a very, very full bowl in Nottingham for the return leg the next night. Belfast, no restrictions on the number of fans that are allowed in. But I'm noticing today, actually, word coming out from the team that there will be no alcohol sold in the arena, because alcohol can only be sold on table service. So clearly they're not doing a to-your seat service, which I'm wholly disappointed in. They will also only be selling selected soft drinks and snacks. So what I can assume from that is there will be no hot food either, because that also comes under the restrictions currently in Northern Ireland where you need table service for hot food. So there will be no overpriced chicken burgers which are lukewarm and take 35 minutes somehow to get your hands on. And yeah, the biggest thing, no beer. So there we go. There's the current situation across the four nations, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, you kind of got a
Good
good roundup there of that. We also are looking at the fact that Glasgow Clan have been moved into COVID protocol, as well as the Sheffield Steelers, as you say, have been moved into the COVID protocol too and have cancelled their games. What was interesting as well, and I just
I
wanted to
thought it was
highlight
more
this.
than that. I thought it was more teams than that. It's just the two.
No, at the moment it's just those two, yeah. But obviously
It is those two. So other teams have just come out of protocol. So
Yeah.
Guildford Flames and the Belfast Giants have just come out of protocol. I believe the Fife Flyers have just come out of protocol as well.
Yeah. And obviously
Now again, we've made the point that we don't even know what this protocol is. If we look at the NHL as we are later on, we probably won't go into detail about what the protocol is with the NHL, but if you were to search NHL COVID-19 protocol, it's laid out in black and white and available to anyone who is interested to read it. Yet again, we have the Elite League leaving all the questions unanswered as to what the COVID-19 protocol is. This has specific relevance when you look at the situation in Sheffield. On Boxing Day, Sheffield played what is widely known to be their biggest moneymaker game, their Boxing Day game against the Nottingham Panthers. That is when they expect to, if not sell out, then close to a sellout. So 9,500 fans, we know they got those. In the lead up to the game, they announced that one player had been not with the team, but due to a positive lateral flow, and they were awaiting a PCR test, which subsequently was positive. Two other players, including the best looking netminder in the Elite League, Barry Brust, were down as having had other illness, which was not COVID. Now, the team said it wasn't COVID, and these guys hadn't been with the team. Subsequently, the next day, they seemed to have tested positive for COVID-19, which then has bundled on, and eventually we've got 8, and then I believe now it's potentially up to 11 Sheffield Steelers have now tested positive for COVID-19. Now, if I'm the Nottingham Panthers, I'm worried at this point, are my players about to come down with COVID-19? Now, that's not to say that the Nottingham Panthers are innocent in this whole debacle. They still chose to carry on. You'd have to assume, having been given more heads-up information about what the situation was in Sheffield, they then chose to do the return leg in their own arena as well, and put potentially their fans and their team at risk, including their own volunteers and off-ice staff. Sheffield, I've said it time and time again, every time something comes out of Sheffield like this, Sheffield have a responsibility to be whiter than white than every other team in the Elite League, than all other 9 teams in the league, solely because the Elite League chairman is their boss. So you've got the Elite League chairman who's supposed to be there over the entire business operation of the Elite League, and his team are either ignoring or finding the grey areas in this unpublic COVID-19 protocol, which says, well, okay, this guy and maybe these 2 guys have got COVID, but we're going to carry on and play with the rest. Oh, wait a minute, it's half the team have got COVID. I mean, it just smacks. And you can see by the social media reaction to that, you've got Sheffield fans and 9 other sets of fans slating the team. Now, you've got the complete holdouts in Sheffield as well, saying, oh, this was fantastic, the team got their payday and everything. But then you've got the Belfast fans who are turning around and saying, well, actually, do you know what? It might be your big payday, but other teams have sacrificed their big payday. The Giants and the Clan have both done it. Their equivalent of the Sheffield Nottingham over the Christmas period is the Belfast Glasgow. If you want to call it a Christmas derby, let's call it a Christmas derby. Both those games were cancelled, and that's a big payday for both teams, regardless of the way that you look at it. Sheffield have a lot to answer for on this, and unfortunately, they're not gonna, because the league chairman's gonna protect them.
Well, let's get it 100% accurate though. The Giants Glasgow one went ahead. It still happened. It happened here in Belfast.
Sorry.
Yeah, the return game in Glasgow didn't happen, but again, that's just down to, I think, due to restrictions, and then I think Glasgow went into, I don't know if they went into it that quickly, but I know then Glasgow then had to cancel the games because of, I think there was all those restrictions that were put in place.
Yep.
In relation to having fans in the arena.
Okay, I apologise
guys,
on that one.
Just going to come back to that. Just to come back to that.
8% kicking in.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Just coming back to that, just that point that I was we were chatting about, just in relation to not just fulfilling the fixtures, but also the fact that, you know, obviously restrictions coming in place on attendance for fans at arenas. Obviously, Dundee and Fife put out a joint statement, clearly highlighting the fact that with the Scottish government putting in place the restrictions around 200 people, it puts both themselves, Dundee and Fife, in very serious financial difficulties. Obviously, as the clubs try to push on, they were obviously reaching out and approached Sport Scotland through councillors to request funding in order to help support them, to allow them to continue to, I suppose, still be active members, I suppose, and to continue with their to fulfil, I suppose, fixtures as best they can. Playing behind closed doors is something that is not a viable thing here in the UK. Even with our Premier Sports, I suppose, league sponsorship, it's still not strong enough to, I suppose, cover costs.
It won't prop up. It will not prop up 10 teams.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
And when you're talking about having 1 or 2 games in a month that are broadcast, that's title sponsorship in everything except money. It's just a name.
And then obviously we have the same situation in Cardiff. Cardiff have said, Todd Kelman came out as well and made his own statement, made a statement too on his own personal Twitter account, stating exactly the same thing, in that, you know, we rely heavily on footfall and butts on seats in order to cover costs for.
But please don't call the office.
Well, yeah, don't call the office, because we don't know what we're doing at the moment right now, because we can't give you tickets back yet, and I think that's what he was worried about, is people asking for refunds, which I suppose people will.
But please don't call the office.
But I suppose he's making the same point. He's relying on government handout as well, from money from Sport Wales, supposed to kind of help fund some things down there. So my 2 questions to you guys, I suppose the 2 main questions I had was, the first one was around this whole thing around, obviously, funding. We know funding is a massive thing for all teams, and making sure that butts and seats is what it is. It helps keep this league driven. If they, you know, do we see, I'm going to go to, I suppose, John, we'll go to you first with this question. Do we see then, if the governments both in Wales and Scotland don't help support these teams, do we see a case where the season then is cut short because the teams can't viably stay on if the restrictions stay in place for longer, say, than a month or 2?
Well, I mean, if restrictions that are in place in Wales and Scotland stay in place, you are looking at almost half of the teams in the Elite League are at substantial business risk. If they're either not given enough money that lets them continue to pay wages where not enough or no fans can come in, then absolutely. If you have two teams or four, if you have four teams that drop out, then the Elite League season is null and void, and the other six teams essentially are going to be down in tools for the rest of the season. It's we are very, very close to a return to this time in 2019. These are exactly the reasons why the 2019-20 season was cancelled early, and it's exactly why the 2021 season didn't even start. And we ended up with a streaming series that about 6 people sat and watched, on the back of government funding because webcasts were overpriced. I'm struggling right now with the number of cancellations that are coming up when you combine the lack of financial resources that are being made available to teams by either governing bodies or by the fact that the Elite League has been so short-sighted with its title sponsorship. People have been crying for years for proper title sponsorship and proper broadcasting that would bring enough money in to support and develop the league more than what it already is as a product. Without
Do
those
you
in
think
place,
that pushes
this doesn't carry
Do
on.
you think that? Do you think that this
No,
season
because
and 2000
if it was
pushes
gonna
it for the following seasons?
if it was gonna have an impact, it would have had that impact in 1920 with the current director and directing team in the Elite League. Now, don't get me wrong, they've done a lot of good work to get Premier Sports back on. Now, bearing in mind the last broadcast deal that we had was with Free Sports. The fact that this is now on pay-per-view TV, I get it. It's not ideal that we're putting our product behind a paywall, but you have to assume that that then comes with an increase in money that's coming across to the league. But
Hope so.
it's clearly not enough to prop up a league. You've got a situation where Premier League football and top flight rugby potentially and were able to carry on through the pandemic because the broadcast money was the vast majority of how people consume those sports. Even though you've got arenas and stadiums that can pack out 60, 70,000, that's chump change to these teams because the TV packages, the merchandise, and everything else that goes with it is worth so much globally. You just have to look at the NHL, the way that they were able to continue on through the pandemic with the bubbles and with the system that they had in place because of broadcasting. Sports in this day and age don't progress on further without proper broadcast deals being put in place. That's the end of the story, essentially.
True.
And if we go the way that things are looking, then we're going to look at a curtailed season.
Yeah, just to finish off the story, and Aaron, I'll throw this question over to you just to finish it off. Obviously, we kind of touched upon this. Obviously, John talked about, obviously the need for the revenue and how that can have that's going to have a massive impact. But we're also, and we touched upon this when we were talking about the clan in pre-period one. Obviously, we're starting to look at fulfilling fixtures. We're starting to look at a backlog of fixtures. Both, obviously, clan. Having to put off all these different games because of COVID protocol now, but also because of obviously they've had to kind of reschedule things well around. As John said, they seem to have come up against a lot of teams who've been into protocol. We also have Stars and Flyers saying they're going to reschedule their games over the Christmas period because they're high numbers and it's revenue that they don't want to lose, so they're going to try and reschedule those somewhere. We have Sheffield Steelers who are currently in protocol until the start of January, so there's I think 5 fixtures I think they had over this period of 2 weeks that they now can't fulfill, which they need to push in as well, push to later in the season too. Are we getting to a point where the Elite League is either going to have to make a decision around either extending, if possible, the league for longer? Is that even a possible thing, or is it just a case of they might just have to kind of reshuffle and look at, right, how do we finish this season fairly?
Is there a precedent for that? Has that happened before where they've kind of cut off games for other teams to let the teams that are falling behind catch up? Has anyone seen that before?
No, never.
Nope. I can't think of that. I suppose it's an awkward time. We've never really had this kind of situation really before. But yeah, like, do they push it on to longer in the into the summer? I suppose they could.
They
is
can't.
there?
The dates are set for playoffs and for the Challenge Cup final. So the
Why?
problem that you've
Why?
got is, well, why? Because they have to go to their venues. So you've got playoffs, for example, is in one of the busiest arenas in the sort of heart of England, in the Motorpoint Arena in Nottingham. They only get a specific weekend for that. There are supposed to be concerts and everything else on. You think that the SSC in Belfast is busy, and it is. The Motorpoint
Yes.
Arena in Nottingham is probably twice as busy as that, with even midweek stuff. I doubt at this
Right.
point we could look at a day in July and get a Wednesday and a Thursday to do playoffs at this point.
Yeah,
Mm.
that, you joke around, but is it a case of maybe I guess they can't because obviously they have to fulfill World Championship fixtures if they go ahead, and we'll
Yep,
obviously talk
and we're
about
going to
that.
lose our GB. Yep, we lose the GB talent for that. And I mean, the league is so hard and set on its current structure that, and with the dates that are all agreed, that we really don't have the flexibility with, especially the arena teams, to fulfill any postponed games.
Yeah,
Now, your likes of Five Flyers, Coventry Blaze, Glasgow Clan to an extent now, because they're more involved with the ownership of their rink than they ever were. You could potentially say that those teams could play their makeup games, but you're also relying on the opposition teams being able to put in place travel, and especially if you're looking at Belfast Giants, about the travel that's required there, and then any postponed games for games in Belfast. Can the opposition put in place the travel requirements necessary? Can they get hotels? Can they get flights and everything else?
yeah, no.
It's
But we're not
the
at breaking
season is
point
on.
yet.
I think the season's on a knife edge.
We're not as Aaron says, we're not at breaking point just yet. But what I will say, and to leave this story to finish this story off, what I would say is the last 2 weeks, obviously a lot has changed, in the last 2 weeks, and obviously our next recording in 2 weeks' time. Let's see what happens. I mean, further
Do
restrictions
you
could
think
come in
there's a
place. Well,
Do you
sorry, Aaron,
think
go
there's
ahead.
a chance? And I appreciate I'm not a doctor, and this could be quite uh, an interesting topic. I've seen articles saying that the Omicron variant isn't as as bad. It's more infectious, but
I'm not touching that.
I don't
I'm
no.
disagree
not
that.
touching that.
That's yeah. It's difficult because obviously we'll have people who believe one thing and people who believe another. All I will say is obviously you need to look at, and again it depends on which way you sit on that. But
I'm not a
we look.
doctor. I'm
Uh,
not a doctor.
uh,
I'm just
I'm not a doctor, but I work within the health service.
yeah.
And if you're looking at if you look specifically at numbers, if we're looking at numbers and factual numbers, we see that
Mm,
there's an increase of people being admitted to hospital because of COVID,
right.
and that is increasing. As of today, I think it was 310 people in Northern Ireland with, in terms of COVID, symptoms and tested positive for COVID-19. So again, if those numbers are going up and hospitals start to struggle
Yeah.
again, God knows what will happen. We never know. And
No, that's
yeah,
fair.
you're right. There's two different arguments and two different sides of the coin in terms of this Omicron variant. But again, let's
Yeah,
let's
we
not
don't
touch
want to
about it
touch
too
it.
much. But
I was
well,
just I was being hopeful that the stories of it, COVID starting to burn itself out, and I'm like, yay, that'll do it. Let's do it. But who knows? As John says, we've no opinion. Very good for a for a podcast, John.
yeah, that's visually. It's okay if you're watching the YouTube video. Otherwise, John is holding up his phone with no opinion on his phone, which is just like, yeah, no worries. He's going to stay quiet. Perfect. All right. With that, then, what we'll do is we'll move on from this story and we'll move on from period on into our penalty box segment before we move on to penalty period two. Okay, our penalty box segment is just a quick roundup of any dops or hits or anything else, suspensions and stuff that have came out over the course of our last recording. We have one since our last recording, John.
Yeah, so this is last Sunday, so Sunday just passed on Boxing Day, I believe. Cardiff Devil Stephen Dixon was assessed a major and game misconduct penalty on the ice for an illegal check to the head of Coventry Blaze defenseman Dane Gibson. Guys, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this video or even sort of at the time. This one, is another example of Dops losing a bit of a reputation in being a department for player safety. Um, the Dixon hit to me is dirty. Um, Gibson Gibson goes behind the net. They're both chasing the puck. Gibson, or sorry, Dixon wins the puck and touches up the puck, but then he follows through with what potentially looks like it could have been a clean hit. My biggest problem with this is that he elevates massively into the hit, and the principal point of contact is the head. Now, if you watch the video and listen to the commentary from the Elite League, they say all of this. They say all of these things. They say that he wins the race for the puck. That's fine, but the next thing is the actual action of the check. Now, if he'd stayed low, this is perfectly legal. The fact that he raises and raises not just his body into the hit, but for me, he raises his shoulder into the hit as well, and absolutely cleans Dane Gibson to the point that he looks rough getting up. Like he doesn't look okay when he's getting up. Now this results in a 1-game ban. Like this is worse than a slap on the wrist. He was fined an elite league amount of money, anywhere between somewhere between 1p and £1 million. You've got to assume it's between 1p and £1 million, somewhere in that region, for money which will be spent on, we're sure, very good causes. But this is another one. This is 4 or 5 games for me.
We go around this topic every single podcast about the consistency of how many games a player should get for each particular hit. And is this going back to the big topic of it's a big team? So do they?
Well, it's an arena team, and yes, let's be perfectly honest. The arena teams have gotten off with big hits like this, and with other potentially suspect plays and stuff that's come up to DOPS, and they've had next to no repercussions out of it. Some of the tweets that were going round from the head of player safety, which some people seem to believe is Todd Kelman. Some of the photo edits were absolutely brilliant, with Kelman with the sort of Snapchat glasses on, which were absolutely brilliant. But I mean, it's difficult to continue to, well, not continue to, because we don't. You can't condone this sort of thing coming out from the league. This is, historically, we've looked at individual incidents where the league is not put into disrepute. I don't want to go as strong as that, but people on the outside of the league can look and go, geez, I can go to the Elite League and get paid to hit guys like that and then get 1 game off. Yeah, okay, I'll go there. And then we end up with a particular brand of hockey here in the UK. Now, there's arguments to be said. Did anyone from the Blaze step up and have a chat with Dixon about this one? Doesn't look like they did. Is it part of fighting going out of the game? Is it part of the physical, not the physical play element of hockey going out, but the physical, the fighting, the enforcing going out of hockey? Potentially, you could argue that. But I thought it was interesting that an NIHL player in particular latched onto this, and there was a comment I saw on social media that he put out, and for a check to the head, he got 6 games because of the penalty point system that the NIHL has in place, which is, again, an open book for anyone who wants to go and read it. You can go and read all about the penalty point system in the NIHL. It's fantastic. Now, they've got their own problems when it comes to their player safety division and who's doing it and all the rest of it. But the penalty point system, he threw a check to the head on someone. He hit a threshold on the penalty points. He got an automatic set number. I think it was 4 games, and then he got the other 2 for reaching trigger points on the penalties. Absolutely great. That's all put out there. This one, all we have is he hit the guy in the head. The head's principal point of contact. He's off for a game.
Yeah, I definitely think from watching the footage and from taking it, like, at least another game or two, a game or two at least, either 2 or 3 game ban for, it looks like a bad hit. I think it should be at least, well, 2 game ban maybe max, I suppose. But I don't like, as you say. We've had this conversation before. We can only surmise that maybe there's a bit of leniency depending on which team. But the fact that like the summarization of it was that they said that he's not being fined or suspended at all this season. Therefore, it's kind of obviously come into play in terms of their whole decision. But it's a hit that they've stated themselves. It's a hit that it could have been completely avoidable, and he didn't. He chose to go in and lead in with the shoulder and elevate into it. He knew what he was doing, and yeah, it's an awful hit, and I think it should have been more.
Yep. I mean, for me, it's just more laughable nonsense from Dops.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be any consistency across these bands
We just need
at
that
all.
rule book, don't we? We just need to get a
Yeah.
copy of.
Oh well, we've
Man's
we've
I-
got
rule
the we've got the case book, but it makes absolutely no sense.
I would
But,
like
yeah.
to see. We know it's never going to happen. We know that they're not going to be transparent about it at the end of the season. But you would love to see at the end of the season the Elite League come forward and putting out information in relation to. And we said it. We have no idea what these fines, what ranges a fine, like what is. It's not like the NHL who clearly state what the fine is and how much the fine is worth. There's no statement around how much this fine is worth for in relation to what it is, where the fines are going. And the Elite League, let's be honest, let's not even joke around. The Elite League are not going to tell us, and the Elite League are not going to tell anybody in the fan base that where this money is going and what it's being used for, and how much has been fined overall, or what they were fined for, like how much each person's fined. It's never going to happen. It would have to be a Freedom of Information Act in order to try and get that information out of them. But yeah, so we'll never know. But it'd be interesting to see at the end of the season. It would have been interesting at the end of the season to see kind of like how much difference it does make in terms of fines and stuff. But we're never going to see that. Guys, I think that is us for period one. I don't see any other stories, and there was only that one story for our penalty box segment. So with that, what we'll do is we will move on swiftly to our period two of hockey.
Okay, well, with the absence of Dave, I'm going to take over period two. Not that I have a huge amount of stories in it, but I at least can point us in the right direction for people who have stories. Period two, as always, is our international hockey period where we talk about hockey all over the world. Marty, looks like you've got a good amount of stories here. Everything from the Olympics all the way down to taxi squads, which is an interesting topic.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm gonna come to you first and let you choose your first story.
Yeah, let's start off with again the Olympic story that I have is in relation to NHL plus the Olympics, and I suppose it's following up on a story that we've been trying to we've been trying to follow over the last couple of recordings. Obviously, there's been a lot of different changes within the Olympic squads and how things are being impacted. With obviously again with COVID restrictions and everything else. But as of this week, the Elite League have officially come out. Or sorry, not the Elite League. Sorry, the NHL has officially came out.
Oh no!
Oh no, the league has done what? The NHL has officially came out and have said that because of the current worsening conditions of COVID-19 in Beijing, that they are reluctant, or barring, sorry, not even reluctant, they are barring NHL stars from attending Olympics and representing their home teams. A lot of players are screaming out to say that the players should be allowed to make their own choices. One such player is Brad Marchand, who has basically put out on his Twitter account quite a long one of those, like whenever someone makes a note on a notepad and then posts it instead. So he did that instead, and they have clearly said about that he put out his displeasure. But as of recording, the NHL have come out and said that they are withdrawing from the Beijing Olympics to, I suppose, save league scheduling, but also to reduce the impact that players. That'll happen should players test positive following the COVID outbreaks in the Winter Olympics. I think there's
We talked about that in the last podcast. That was quite scary, wasn't it?
It was,
the amount of time that they were going to have to stay.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the big reasons for this. And obviously they've made this decision. I think we talked in the last podcast that they were going to have this conversation, a further conversation around this, and the NHL as well as the NHL Players Association both agreed originally that while players could participate in Olympics as part of a bargaining agreement that happened last year, they've came to a point where the scenario is that massive stars like Austin Matthews, McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, all those players could effectively be missing for long periods of time. Um, so as I say, the while the agreement was made last year, and we talked about the fact that these stars were kind of concerned about going, and there's a massive concern. Obviously, as I mentioned, Brad Marchand did put out on his own social media. He'd said that with the change in the rules, and there's obviously different things happening within the league, or the NHL itself, which I will talk about in a few minutes. He believes that the NHL Players Association and the NHL itself should honour the agreement that they made to allow NHL players to go over and play as part of the Olympic teams. He went as far as saying that it is basically. I'm not going to put it in because I have to put in a beep in, and I don't want to put a beep in, but he did use some explicit language on his tweet in order to convey his annoyance for what is happening, and the fact that he wasn't able to partake. I mean, guys, is this a surprise? I've put in our running order not a surprise. I've put as expected. It's bound to come, I suppose. After us talking in that last episode about the massive gap that you would have in relation to if you had to go into, you know, um, isolation, I suppose, because of COVID
Mm.
restrictions. Are we surprised this is what's happened? I mean, and also we're going to talk in a minute about the junior championships. But is there any surprise here, John?
No, I mean let's be perfectly honest. I was surprised that the league was willing to potentially sacrifice its product to allow players to go while COVID was still there. When you've got the potential of having to miss, even with a potential winter break, or that I mean, it always happens around the All Star weekend anyway. But you're going to lose some of your big name talent for the All Star weekend to the Olympics every 4 years as well if you do it around that time. Um, Another thing that you've got in that we're going to talk about as well, I don't know whether it's worth just mentioning it here now, is the return of taxi squads to the NHL again.
Yeah.
So obviously during the pandemic season where it was all behind closed doors, teams were really worried, and owners especially were really worried about the postponement of games, and therefore the taxi squads were brought in. Essentially a travelling set of players that can slot in to any of your lines within the team without having to forfeit. So it means that you're bringing up OHL, AHL talent and allowing them to stick within the bubble of the main team. That if somebody in particular comes down with COVID, you've got an instant replacement there. You're not having to worry about isolating, bringing someone from somewhere else, isolate them for a period of however many days, and all the rest of it. So it's not surprising that all of these things have all happened at once. And like you said, Marty, the fact that we're now seeing it impact on other international tournaments, it's really difficult to see how you can have massive impacts on these tournaments and other tournaments being cancelled outright, even in the middle of them. How we're going to get any sort of Winter Olympic hockey at all, to be honest. I'm still flabbergasted that we're actually getting Winter Olympics at this point, and not expecting the winter or the hockey product to be really worth anything at this point. It's going to be, 12-year-olds who are going to have to go because they're exempt from things like jabs and everything else. I mean, it might as well be a pee-wee tournament at this point. They're technically they could go to the Olympics because they're all unsigned non-pros. So let's just do a pee-wee tournament in Beijing instead.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good segue there. Obviously, we're not surprised. As I say, as you said about as we were talking about the Olympics, making that decision. Obviously, after what we talked about from our last recording. But you put in a good point, and we'll segue into that. My next story was around that whole taxi squad thing, and about the fact that the NHL are returning to taxi squad. Due to the fact that there was a postponement of 50 games just before Christmas, which when you think about it, you think it's a huge number, but actually, it's not a big number. That's maybe like 2 games maximum, like over the course of a weekend. It's not it's not a massive amount of games. When you think about it in run up of how many teams we have in the NHL. But each of the 32 teams are allowed a taxi squad of up to 6 players, as John has mentioned. The reserve squad are there as an intention to prevent any shortcomings in terms of making sure there's 18 skaters and 2 goaltenders at all times. One of the big things, though, and I found was quite interesting, was that they did decide that they would up the for the remainder of the season. They have upped the salary cap. We talked about this in a previous episode as well about the salary cap, and they've raised the salary cap as of now to $1 million dollars for this season, where it was obviously the previous limit was 850,000. So they have announced that they have allowed for emergency call-ups and a salary cap which has raised to allow for these obviously reserve squad numbers in order to maximise and make sure that they are still able to fulfil and pay obviously the players that are coming in on an emergency basis.
Because I think technically, don't the taxi squad members they're effectively considered active roster players.
They are. Yeah, they are indeed, and they'll be down as an active roster member. So even if they were only playing one game, they will obviously be down as having an NHL game in them or an effective roster member.
It's really interesting actually. See, when you look at how those are managed, and the only reason I know it is the Amazon Prime documentary about the Leafs. Is it All or Nothing?
Yeah.
And they never specifically look into it, but the big board in the GM's office, whenever Sheldon is in speaking to Dubas, you see the squad is out on like these magnetic strips on the whiteboard, and then through that season, obviously they had the list of names on the taxi squad too. So it's really interesting seeing how that works alongside the main team, and then the taxi squad, and how the teams are managing those effectively 2 squads to create a product for any given game night. So it's good to see that that's going to sort of continue, and that we're not, hopefully, not going to see as many game postponements going forward.
Yeah, indeed.
I went to watch that that documentary a couple of mornings ago, and I turned it on, and for the first 5 minutes of it, I had Theo in the room. He was a 4-year-old.
No.
And I was like, there was an F-bomb dropped, and I was like, oh well, maybe it was just the one. And then like 30 seconds later,
You're gonna want to mute it every time Sheldon's on screen. You're gonna want to mute that TV.
It's more
gives you a flavour of what the Giants back room might be like, doesn't it?
It's more of a, I think it's more of an adult nighttime show, no kids around type show, because there's a lot of it's it's a lot. I'm sure Sheldon's mother probably, or father or parents anyway, were probably like, do you have to curse as much as you do? Because it's a lot. It's a lot. Before I move on to my next story, Aaron, you made a taxi squad. You made a little joke around about that. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a, for anybody who isn't aware of where taxi squad comes from, a little bit of history around what the taxi squad origins are. It actually comes from the Cleveland Browns football team back in the 1940s. The coach at the time was a coach called Paul Brown, and he came up with the idea of keeping promising players who didn't make the Browns first team as reserves in case of injury or illness. But in order to do so, they had to be paid as part of staying there. But because they didn't have money within the team budget to pay for those players, instead what happened was that the coach himself, Paul Brown, operated and owned a taxi company. And he employed all of those reserve players via the taxi company. So he was paying for these players from his taxi company. They were never, obviously, taxi drivers, but they were then
This
paid
reminds
for
me,
it
what
by...
was that show that I watched a while back? That was the guy bought his teenager the
Oh,
SLP
this was
team.
the Danbury Thrashers, and they were all
Yeah.
technically... What were they?
They were like a recycling
Were they,
center.
were they supposed to be garbage men?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so there you go. That's where the taxi squads come from. Derives from that. So there you go.
Good trivia, Marty. I like that.
There you
That's
go.
someone who puts the work in on a podcast.
Thank you. Guys, I'm going to move on to my next story. This one, obviously, and again, this is if John is kind of giving me these nice segues into my stories, but Toronto Maple Leafs are what we're talking about now, and this is what I was talking about prior to period 1, when I was saying about I had a few things to talk about in relation to Toronto. And again, I don't know if this is down fully to Toronto's fault or if it's an NHL thing. But it's a move for me that just reeks of greed, I suppose. And that is the postponement of two Toronto Maple Leafs games coming up, because of similarly the conversation we had about in period one, where there were restrictions around attendance in Scotland and in Wales. There's also a strict restrictions in relation to attendance in Canada as well. So, because of Canadian attendance restrictions, the NHL made a decision to postpone the January 3rd and January 6th Toronto Maple Leafs games because of the Canadian attendance restrictions. Um, so, obviously, they're going to have to make up those dates some ways by re establishing and changing and looking at another dates for rescheduling those dates at a later time in the season. When what they've said was when restrictions were lifted, so that more money it's basically so that more money can be made. And again, this is a reason why there's nothing stopping these teams playing. They could have went ahead with half arenas, but as the NHL kind of put out, it doesn't look good if it's a half arena. Basically it doesn't look good for the sport, it doesn't look good for the league if you're having filling half an arena rather than a full arena.
And is
So
that what
two
it is?
games.
It's only 50% attendance.
It's
though,
yeah,
like,
it's reduction. It's just a reduction.
So
It's not a
I've
full.
been looking at it. So just when because I didn't even know that this had come in. So
Yeah.
it's either 50% or zero,
Yep.
depending on where you are in Canada, which is, I mean that's weird. But to me, yeah, you're 100% right. It does smack of greed. But when we've just come off a season where all games were played, most games, sorry, not all games, were played behind closed doors with the huge banners that the league and all the teams had made to cover up the empty seats. In what world can't you make that work? In what
Yeah.
world where this league can clearly prop itself up on broadcasting and media rights and merchandise rights and everything else, like there's no shortage of money in the NHL, let's be perfectly honest. Why can't you operate at 50% capacity? Why can't you put those banners back out on the side of the cameras? And for the odd time where you maybe need to have a wide shot that shows the arena, why not have those sweeping team banners across the background? To me, that
I'm
just
going to guess that
100% smacks
there's
of
going to be
greed.
some social distance in there. That they're not going to be 50% all on one side. Oh no, I'm COVID. I know that I'm not allowed to spread when I'm on this side of the arena.
Maybe, but when you're in arenas that
there's going to be some.
size, when you're in arenas that size, you could close off every other section or whatever. There's bound to be ways of doing it, but okay, I can accept that maybe it's not as simple as putting out the banners and closing off every other section, but it just
Yeah.
it reeks.
Part of me thinks that it's like, part of me, we've talked about it. Obviously we know that leagues like our own do rely on that revenue stream. But when it comes to NHL, I know it's a massive hit to decide to not. It's a massive hit. It's a massive hit finance wise for them not to have any fans and stuff in the crowd. But again, as you say, John, they've done it before. It's two games. If they want to continue the season without having to reschedule and trying to fit in what's already looking like a difficult season again, with obviously the changes and COVID restrictions and protocols that have already taken place, and different teams having to miss different games throughout the season already, if they want to avoid having to kind of keep trying to, I suppose, at some point this season it's going to be similar to what's going to happen in the Elite League. Probably is you're going to have a run of just a real backlog of games that you're going to have to try and fill in such a short space of time. I mean, the NHL is big enough to be able to continue doing those games without having to worry too much.
Yeah, and look,
So it's
midweek games are not as big a problem for the NHL either. You can play a game on Tuesday; it doesn't matter. You will still get fans coming out. And you can play a game on a Thursday, and the arena availability is probably not a big deal. It's I don't know. I just struggle with this one where you've got the money that's blowing around, and I accept the teams are going to have more outgoings now because the taxi squads are back and everything else that's going on. But you've now got your core talent is not going off to the Winter Olympics. You've protected your brand under that. These countries are making these restrictions based on the evidence that they've got, and I mean it's on you to either say it's playable or it's unplayable, not we want the extra money at the gate. You can either play the game or you can't play the game. It's not a case of waiting for the right number of fans. I mean, if you're Florida, I mean, you're thinking 50% capacity. Is someone going to help us get that?
True. Guys, I've got one last story in this period, and that is just a quick one, and I'm sure Dave his ears picking up all of a sudden, because he knows we're talking about the Minnesota Wild. Tomorrow, well, we are, as I say, if you're listening to this podcast when it's been released, then you're listening to it on New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day is on this coming Saturday. But also with that comes the annual Winter Classic game, which will see Minnesota Wild take on the St. Louis Blues at Target Field. The reason why I'm raising this is obviously it's been held this year in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And while I've never been to Minneapolis, Minnesota ever in my life, so I can't talk from a experience point of view, a first-hand experience point of view, I do know one massive thing about Minnesota, and it is a very, very cold place in the middle of winter, to the point where they are stating that this coming Saturday looks like the Winter Classic will go down as possibility being the coldest Winter Classic on record, with temperatures looking to plummet to minus 17 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe.
Let's be clear, I searched this
Fahrenheit.
earlier. So I was also looking at a piece very similar to this, but first of all, I want to give you kudos on the source for the story that you've put in the running order. I love that this is Golf Digest having a dig at the NHL for this. Absolutely fantastic. Top level journalism here from Golf Digest. Minus 17 with wind chill is expected to be minus 24 degrees Fahrenheit. I asked a well-known smart assistant that's sitting over there, who also can play the Door 14 Hockey Podcast if you ask it to, what that was in real money. Do you know that's like lower than like minus 32 degrees Celsius? Yeah. So, like, I read the piece, and not to steal. Yeah. So Fahrenheit is a weird one where like the minuses get really weird. And I checked the minus 17. That's like minus 22 Celsius, minus 23 Celsius. So it's brutal.
For some reason, I thought Celsius was warmer. Okay, right.
No. So reading through it, there's a weird switch thing happens.
Minus 27 Celsius.
So there's a weird switch thing. Fahrenheit and Celsius don't work on the same scale. So my favorite part of this is, like, they're saying that there is a huge risk of any exposed skin being frostbitten within 2 minutes of exposure to these temperatures. The NHL have apparently bought in hand warmers.
Oh, that's good.
They've bought in hand warmers for people, and they've also said you can bring a blanket. I kid you not. This is what the league is saying. We will look after your fingers. We'll make sure they don't fall off. But as far as hypothermia and potentially dying in the stands is concerned, that's on you, fans.
Yeah, I mean,
apparently serving soup is part of their risk assessment to stop people dying at the Winter Classic.
You joke, but if
are they
Dave
not, or are they going to?
They are serving soup.
If Dave was here, he would completely 100% like he know where I'm coming from with this. I believe that in Murrayfield back in the day, whenever we used to play at Edinburgh in Murrayfield, I think the risk assessment in Murrayfield was exactly the same thing. It was because there's no heating properly for the fans and for people sitting watching this game because it gets so cold. We're going to give out free tea and coffee to make sure that they stay warm at all times, because
amazing.
One of the games that we went to in Murrayfield back, probably I think it was really, we were hit really it was hit with really heavy snow, to the point.
Is that the year I was there?
No, this was before that. This is before you, John. This is before you started coming.
Before John.
In the year BJ. Wait a minute.
BJ?
What? Move on. This is
that the title of this podcast? The year before BJ existed.
Yeah. The year before BJ. We were there, and we nearly got snowed in to the point where we went to the game, and as we were coming home, our flight was cancelled, so we had to find an alternative way to get back to Northern Ireland. We got to the train station, Waverley, is that what it's called? In
Edinburgh.
Got to Waverley train station in Edinburgh. Got the last train leaving Edinburgh to Glasgow. got to Glasgow, got the last train leaving Glasgow to go to Ayr, and then we got the Ayr, and by the time we got the Ayr, they said, sorry, there's no way to get the Stranraer. Instead, we're going to put you in a taxi, and we'll pay for the taxi to get the Stranraer for you. And so they paid for a taxi for us to get the Stranraer. And there's us in this taxi with this Scottish driver, just like, oh yeah, I've been driving these roads for years in the snow, who cares? And we just literally like, oh my god, we're gonna die. It was crazy. But yeah, that's in Murrayfield. That's what they did. They give us hot drinks in order to make sure our fingers didn't get
It's funny
frostbite and fall off.
you talk about heating and the fact that there was no heating in Murrayfield. Have you read the rest of the story and what they're having to heat?
Yeah.
They are having to heat the rink.
Yep.
They're having to heat the ice because the league has a specific like Goldilocks zone of temperatures for the ice. So in any rink situation, the glycol, the stuff that's going through the ice plant and through the pipes underneath the ice, generally speaking, that is being cooled and the heat is coming out of the ice and then being thrown out by the ice plant to keep the glycol cool, to keep the ice solid and in that Goldilocks zone. They're now saying that the ice here at wherever, what is this place called again? I've forgotten what the name of the stadium is. Anyway, whatever it is, the ice Target Field. At Target Field, it's going to be so cold that the ice is going to go way outside of that Goldilocks zone that they're going to have to heat the glycol, and they've got 2 heaters. This is the first time in Winter Classic history or outdoor NHL game history they've had to have 2 of these things to make sure that the ice stays at the right temperature and doesn't become so cold that it becomes brittle and breaks. The other one was the pucks.
They have to warm the pucks up rather than freezing them.
No. So everyone said, so clearly we talked about it when we talked about it in the ABCs of hockey about a puck, that it has to be frozen to make sure that it doesn't bounce everywhere. And apparently they were talking to the people who are in charge of this game and getting this field ready and said, oh, well, you're not going to need the freezer for the pucks. And I went, well, no, we are, because the league still has a Goldilocks zone for the pucks. I didn't realise they're changed out every 2 minutes of play regardless in the NHL. They are changed out every 2 minutes to make sure that they're at the right temperature. So they are going to make sure
it can't be changed out every 2 minutes.
Yep. Well, every 2 minutes or every break of play in between times.
Yeah.
So during any break, or if there's like start a play, 30 seconds, a whistle goes, 30 more seconds, and you get another minute after that, that puck gets changed out. This time, everyone's joking and saying, oh, you're clearly not going to need to the freezer for the pucks. And they're going, well, no, actually we do, because the pucks might get too cold. So we're still bringing the freezer with us, which is going to have the certain temperature inside, and that's the temperature that they're going to be at. And they're still going to change them every 2 minutes in case the puck gets too cold this time.
Crazy. If you remember correctly, was it this time last year we were obviously in full lockdown, and we were on New Year's Day. We sat down and we're gonna watch it together via video link. You remember we put on our. I think we sat down to kind of watch it, and then it was cancelled because of the heat. It was too warm and the ice wasn't melting, and then
it was slushy.
And now this year it's the opposite way around.
Was that the one that was at the lake? Remember?
Yeah.
Yep.
It was stunning. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous. The most stunning location I've ever seen for. Was that a Winter Classic or was that the Heritage? Was that the Heritage Classic?
Wasn't it? That was a Heritage Classic. Yeah.
Was that in Florida?
Yeah, somewhere balmy.
I think it was somewhere warm anyway. But that was a complete and utter disaster. That one. They had to come back. Was it 8 or 9 hours later and play the game?
Yeah.
After the sun had gone down.
Was it last year's Winter Classic that was played? It was the year before. Remember, it was the really bad traffic and everything, and it was like complete nightmare.
Well, it was the crush. It was the crushes of fans, and a fan died.
Yeah, that's right.
On the way out, a fan died. We knew someone who was at that game.
That's right. Yeah.
Roisin was at that game, and she confirmed. I got chatting to her afterwards because that was obviously the Winter Classic that the Preds played against the Dallas Stars. She's a Stars fan, and she said it was an absolute disaster from start to finish. There was about 3 food stalls that 70, 80, 90,000 people were trying to go to.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Absolutely brutal. So, yeah, good luck to everyone going to the Winter Classic this year.
Yeah, try and stay warm. Think warm thoughts.
Yep.
That's
What's
me.
been the
That's my last
coldest that
story.
you've ever? What's been the coldest that you guys have ever dealt with? I appreciate
Uh,
this isn't quite hockey, but
Minus. I'm going to talk degrees. I think the coldest I have been in is minus 15 degrees Celsius. Is
yeah.
the coldest I've been in, and it was freezing. That was in Stockholm. Whenever we went to Stockholm in March, a couple of years back.
So when I was growing up, I spent about a year total living in Canada, away sort of up north, and I remember over the winter it was about minus 25, minus 30, and
Oof.
we you could go outside in a t-shirt because like cold is based on or how you feel it is based on moisture in the air.
Once you're in there,
So
yeah.
as the moisture in the air gets to your skin, and then you add wind and everything, that's where you get the chill from. It was so cold that there was no moisture in the air. Like I was walking over like 6 or 7 feet of snow, but it was the air temperature was really really cold. But when the sun was out, it felt warm because there was nothing to
Right.
tell you it was cold. Now if you slipped and fell into the snow or something, you would flash freeze like straight away. But it's the weirdest sensation ever. So yeah, for me, probably about minus 25, minus 30 in uh, Geraldton, which I believe is in Manitoba.
Oh,
But you're talking about that kind of
Crazy cold,
temperature that the crazy cold that they're going to see on Saturday.
but
That's
with wind
insane.
chill and
Yeah,
moisture.
that's
Like
true.
dew, I think they say the dew point in that one is like minus 14. So there is still like moisture in the air. So these people will feel this.
Yeah.
yep, definitely. We will be. I will be. I know I will be watching anyway. We'll see what the temperature does get down to when we're watching it. But
Who's
hopefully not.
broadcasting it this year? Is Premier or Free Sports
Yeah.
broadcasting it this
No,
year?
Premier. I think. I think. Well, I think Premier maybe. I don't know. Actually, it was Free Sport last year, wasn't it? Yeah,
It
it
was
was
Free
Free
Sport
Sport
last
last year.
year.
I don't know.
Fingers
Good
crossed for
question.
Free Sports.
I'll have a look while we're
I
talking. Because
I'm
we're moving on
I'm
to your
too
stories
cheap.
next.
I'm too cheap to buy Premier.
Well, I think Marty,
Uh,
that's your four stories.
it is.
So we'll move on to John, and I know that Dave has done some homework, but we'll let you take that one as well.
Dave
Which
did
one
some
would you
homework,
like?
and we gave him credit for it because he was the first one to bring it up in our group chat. But realistically, these things kind of go hand in hand. So I'm going to start going back a few months, and the IIHF's decision to cancel a number of tournaments, and that includes the under 18s Women's World Championship. Now, this decision was called out. This is the second year running that this tournament has been cancelled. Effectively, this is the women's version of the World Junior Championships. We all know that the World Junior Championships is one of the highlights of the hockey year. It's a great way to finish off the year, and you get to look at a lot of talent that is really being looked at for the next draft season. But this is 2 years now where the women haven't been able to compete in this, and the WIHF were rightly called out on the fact that for 2 years their tournament hasn't gone on, but the WIHF has done everything in its power to make sure that the World Junior Championships went ahead and the men's competition carried on. This then prompted a response from IIHF President Luc Tardif, where he gave a statement and basically says that look, it's not great having to cancel anything. I'm not going to read it verbatim. It's quite a long interview he gave, and there's a little highlight statement on the IIHF Twitter page if you want to go and have a look at it. However, he's done nothing to quell the problems which have been apparent by the IIHF's decisions. Not least because we're now in a situation where a week after this decision was made that the World Junior Championships would go ahead, now, because of COVID issues, the World Junior Championships in the middle of the tournament has been cancelled. All teams are being sent home because COVID is absolutely rife throughout the tournament. This all just adds petrol to the fire that is the IIHF's decision to go ahead and promote and push forward at any cost their major competitions that bring in revenue. And rightly, they have been called out and have a lot of both men and women on the playing side of it and the development side of it have said, you're looking after the money, you're not looking after the product, you're not looking after the players. The president's statement does absolutely nothing to address the real issue here, and actually, he just makes things worse. It's impressive to see a hockey organisation outside of the elite league manage to get the tone of something so incredibly wrong, and it's nice to know that it's not just the elite league who can do that. But guys, like Marty, what's your thoughts on this? He's completely missed the mark for me, especially when you look at, you've got people like Kendall Coyne are prime examples of people who have called him out on what the IIHF's response has been.
Yeah, and I think just rightly so. Again, we talk about we've been trying to, we talked about the positive step forward so far this season, for the female game, for women's game, and across across the pond, and we've talked about how positive things have moved forward there in relation to, like, obviously rebranding and really focusing on, obviously increasing women's sport. But again, it just reeks of, why would you move forward with the men's one, but yet cancel the females, under 18s one world championships. It has backfired. It's a massive, it's a massive failure. I think it's really, it's tone deaf. It's and that's what it is.
And it's
I
a
think
double hit, isn't it, as well, because they've decided to go ahead with the World Junior Championships, and
Very
then
much so.
they've had to subsequently be cancelled.
Very
Or
much
sorry,
so.
they're not officially cancelled, I think, if I'm 100% right. I think they've been postponed at this point with a potential to bring them back later
again.
on in the
Yep.
year, which, if anyone is looking at it, is going, that's nearly impossible at this point. But it is completely tone deaf, isn't it? They've missed
Oh,
the
massively.
point. He's
Yep.
made this statement,
Huge.
and the IIHF themselves, as an organisation, have let this statement go out, and then a few days later have had to cancel what is one of their highlight tournaments, and was forming the basis of part of their argument about why that was allowed to go ahead, but the women's one wasn't.
And
I mean, Aaron, what do you think?
What else can you say that you guys haven't? To be honest with you, it's just a shambles. You can't. There's no basis that they can put forward that the men's games could have gone forward and the women's games couldn't have. There's.
Yep.
What is their argument that for that? As you say, John, that they don't really put any of that forward. They just kind of, it feels like, bury their head in the sand and just
It's buried their head and
say their point
tried
and
to
then
be.
move
I mean,
on.
look, he does make the point, and he tries to make the point that there is a commercial aspect to the World Junior Championships and to other top flight men's competitions like the Senior World Championships, Division 1A, 1B, going ahead, because there is money tied in with broadcasting agreements, there's sponsorship agreements, there's all the rest of it goes along with that. And the IIHF, like any organisation, is looking after its bottom line. What he's done by saying that is, the women's game doesn't touch our bottom line, we don't care. That's
kind of
essentially what he said.
Are we taking a slightly contradictive stance to what we talked about earlier, though, where we said that we want the IHL to have that stance where we've got broadcasting and we've got the money going forward and we've got the money to make sure that
That's fine when that is your one product. The problem here is the IIHF have a responsibility not just to the men's product but also to the women's and the junior product, which they've clearly said, here's a pedestal over here which is much higher for the men and the World Junior Championships. Here's the pedestal that we put the women's game and all the other tournaments that go along under our IIHF banner, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's not equitable across what they're supposed to be responsible for is the main
Yeah.
problem, and that's what they've been called out on. But look, people can make their own opinions. I don't think there's anyone leaping to defend the IIHF on these decisions. If anyone wants to contradict us, get into the comments, drop us a DM, drop us something more public if you feel like you want to get into a Twitter war with us. Let's go. As Jeff Baum's dad is wont to say, LFG.
Indeed, indeed. Aaron, before you round off this period, just to quickly come back on the question around the Winter Classic this year. It is being broadcast live on Premier Sports. It'll be on Premier Sports 1 at 12 o'clock on Sunday the 2nd, so Sunday morning here in the UK. Obviously, it's Saturday, January 1st in the US, Canada. It'll be 12 o'clock here in the UK.
I look
So
forward
midnight.
to watching highlights on YouTube. Totally on highlights on YouTube.
Yes. Well, that rounds up period two. We've nothing in the penalty box, so obviously everyone in the NHL was squeaky clean this week, and there was no
There's no
penalties
games.
ever.
There was no games.
There's no
It was a
games.
break.
So let's move on to period three.
Okay, welcome along to period 3, which is our general knocky
Lucky
news.
news.
I love that you
Does that
can't
work
do it in
better
time
with
with
this?
me, but you guys can do it in time with each other. I mean, 2 years of doing a podcast in a pandemic. I mean, really?
Put that beer down.
I know, sorry.
Yeah, there wasn't a delay.
Knocky-
It was just the delay of your head.
Was. Knocky news then is where we talk about anything and everything else in the world of hockey that doesn't fit neatly into period 1 or period 2. Marty, I'm going to come to you first because I absolutely love this one. This is just a nice little funny if you're on the outside looking at it. Probably not if you're one of these players who unfortunately had a run-in with the doors that the Zamboni goes out.
Yeah, that's right. The Swiss second tier hockey league. There's two teams there. HC Sear takes on SC Lingelthal. Lingelthal? Yeah, we'll try that. That sounds good enough.
Langenthal.
Two players from both those teams collided with each other, and the pair then barreled through the side wall, forcing the gates to the Zamboni, where the Zamboni drives out, open, and they fell into the cleaning ditch of what's basically the way their rink is set up there is that the Zamboni goes in, clears the ice, and as it comes back out again, there is a section that's lifted up, and all of the ice that's taken off from the Zamboni then is dumped into basically a trough, for better word, and it all then is underneath the one side of the arena. As the players then busted through this gate out, they accidentally fell into this ditch of stagnant, frozen water, really, and had to be lifted out. I think the best image of it is the image that was put up on Twitter by SC Lengelthal, where they joked around that they needed a new rink where the players were swimming, as the players and refs were helping these two players coming out of this ditch. Like, it's a big enough ditch, but I can only imagine the no injuries were happened. We should put that forward, but freezing cold ditch water. Yeah, it was just funny. The video itself as well, if you watch the video, it is something quite comical. You don't imagine, when you see them going through, you don't expect them then to be falling through and onto this weird ditch further on down. I thought when I first seen the video, I thought, oh, did they just fall outside the rink? Which is funny enough because they went through the gate. I thought, funny enough, obviously they've went outside the rink and they've landed on some ice, until I realised, actually, no, they've fallen down a ditch full of, and then when you find out it's full of water that just came off the ice surface, you're kind of like, it's kind of gross as well. So
I
yeah.
thought our Zamboni doors were fragile. Like, it's not a big check either. So the funniest thing for me is the image there of the number of players all standing around looking at them when they're down in the ditch. It's almost like when you ever seen one of those YouTube videos where like little ducklings will fall down a sewer grate or something, and then it somehow takes about 8,000 Americans to lift a sewer grate and then scoop little ducks back out of a drain. That to me is what it looks like. It also seems to take an insane amount of time to get them out of there. Like, I granted, it looks quite deep, but that's a lot of hockey players. Like, you put that strength together, they should be able to lift those guys out without any real problem. It's just quite comical. I did have a little moment in my heart there when I saw that one of the players was Higgins.
yeah, but no,
I
not
was like,
Higgins.
oh no, not Chris. But it's not Chris, it's okay. That's a good one. Guys, I'm going to move on to my story then. So obviously, with the new year coming on very quickly, we talked about one event that, as standard, comes with the new year, and that's the Winter Classic. But another one that follows very quickly on the heels of that is the All-Star weekend. And we've had potentially the first leak of the All-Star jerseys. Now, this is, at this moment in time, entirely unconfirmed, but I've sent the link to you guys, and this jersey has been produced under the new Adidas Prime Green, which is the recycled material. So it does lend itself to think that this is a genuine product. What's your thoughts on these? Now, I can imagine that this is one color variant. I would assume that we're going to get another 3. We tend to get 4 color variants of these. So I would assume that there's a reverse of this. Maybe the reds and the black and white get switched over. And then I'd imagine that there's a blue variant will go along with this. It tends to be red and blue is the colors that they go for the All-Star weekend. It's a simple design, but for me it
I like
works.
it.
It's better than
Yeah,
what we've
it's
seen.
clean.
And some of the comments I've seen, it actually mirrors some of the real old school All-Star jerseys, just with the sort of 4 or 5 stars across it. Marty, what's your thoughts on that as an All-Star jersey?
Yeah, I like it. I think my main thing is, and I think I talked about this. We talked about this in one. I think maybe not last year, the year before. I think it was. For some reason, they decided to move away when they went down the route of having the 4 different teams, for the 4 different obviously divisions or whatever. They moved away from this classic NHL shield from the front of the jersey. So they moved away from it. They had like team jerseys, so it looks like like Team North or whatever it was they had on them. And I actually didn't like it when they changed away from the NHL shield from the front of the jersey. I actually like the simplistic version that this. If these are real, if these are legitimately what they look like, I like it. I like the fact that they've put the NHL shield back center, center of these jerseys. I wasn't a fan of that team that team idea that they had going. It just didn't work for me.
Aaron,
quite
what's
like
your
there's a
thoughts on
tweet
it?
later on. There's a tweet later on down the line where they say that it's got a 90s Vegas Thunder energy, and they put up an image of the Vegas Thunder's jersey back in the 90s, which is it's pretty much got the white at the top and then the arrows at the bottom, but it's black, grey, and teal. And it's just got a similar
That looks
vibe
more
to it.
like
It's
an
quite
old
funny.
school marriage of a San Jose and a Ducks jersey.
It
That
looks like
looks
I was about to say.
nothing like that All-Star
I was,
jersey.
I was about to say it
What
looks
are
like a
you?
Mighty Ducks. I was about to say it looks like a
If
Mighty
you
Ducks
took
jersey. It
out
looks like
that thunder, if you took out that thunder logo in the middle and put the
yeah.
NHL logo in it, it's close.
Nah.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. Like it's the design is like obviously with the lines and the way the lines go up along the arms and
Yeah,
stuff. The diagonal lines, but yeah, I get what John means. It does look a lot like it does look like a D2. It looks like a Mighty Ducks 2 jersey. It definitely does.
yeah.
Look, we're
That's
not
'cause
here
it's back in the
reviewing
90s,
the
to be
Vegas
fair.
Thunder jersey. We're not reviewing a Vegas Thunder jersey. We're here to look at the potential All-Star weekend
want a
jersey.
Vegas
We'll come
Thunder
back.
jersey now.
We'll come back again. We'll come back again to look at the Vegas Thunder jersey if we really want to. But Aaron, what's your thoughts on this leaked All-Star jersey?
Want one? As you say, you said it already. It's nice. It's clean. It's just got the nice NHL shield in it. Yeah, can I have one, please?
If you were gonna play like rec hockey or ball hockey or something, that's one that you would throw on just to go like to a sports center or something and like wear over your gear, isn't it? That's
Did
Yeah.
Did Dave buy one? Not
Dave,
this one,
yeah.
but the previous year's one.
Yeah, Dave has one. He has one of the All Star ones that just has the NHL logo on it, the NHL shield on it. I think he picked up whenever him and his wife were in New York. I think when he was in the NHL store, I think they were selling it cheap, and I think he picked one up. But yeah, he's got one. He's got one. I think it was like wasn't it the season where they had them like with the like black and then they had like the neon like
All black.
green like colors and stuff on it or something like that.
Oh,
But
Yeah, it
he's
is.
got one.
Yeah.
Can't remember if that was the All-Star weekend in Nashville that maybe had those, but it might be the year previous to that. But it was close to that.
Before we move on, just because we're talking about jerseys, did either of you two guys see the story about the a bit of a controversial jersey that was out there in the last 2 weeks, just before Christmas actually. There was a game, a Northern European game between Finland and Russia, and the Russian team decided to do like a throwback jersey, and their throwback jersey.
CCCP.
Yeah, it was a Soviet era jersey that they decided to go back to. So they wore a uniform that had CCCP on it on the front.
No.
Yeah, yeah. So people were just like,
That's like the Simpsons episode, isn't it? Where is it a Halloween special, and like that's in the UN, and they're like, he's like, the Soviets will not stand for this, and then all the other guys are like, wait a minute, didn't you guys break up? And he's like, that's what we wanted you to think. And hits a button and it turns round. All the fluffy bunny patrol or parades in Moscow change back to like nukes and everything.
yeah. But I'll throw up the link. Anyone you can have a look at it. But yeah, it caused a lot of controversy because obviously, given the significance of this, like
Given the
what that
significance and given
stands
what
for,
Russia
and
is currently doing
oh
in
yeah,
sort of Eastern Europe, yeah,
yes,
I can see
exactly.
that.
But yeah, I just
Um,
thought I'd mention that too.
there we go, from a nice jersey to a controversial one.
Very
Aaron,
controversial.
something that's a lot less controversial. I'm going to come to you for yours because this is fantastic. The first good news story we've seen coming out of the Blackhawks organization in what seems like a generation.
In quite a while. Yes, this is a story about Brigitte Lequette, who is the first Indigenous woman to become a scout for the Blackhawks, which isn't just a great story for a woman, but she's the first Indigenous woman as well. So it's breaking barriers all over the show. She became the First Nations woman to play hockey for Canada back in the Winter Olympics in 2018, and she earned her silver medal for that. She didn't get pulled up for the 2022 Olympics though, and she's just kind of been keeping on the back pedal, keeping herself busy to try to get into the to the next round. But in between times, basically what happened was she saying that she was scrolling through Facebook one day and she got a message on Facebook from the Blackhawks assistant manager Ryan Stewart asking her if she would want to become a scout for them. She thought it was fake. She actually had to Google him first to find out if it was real, which I thought was quite funny. Um, and she didn't take the job first off. She was waiting to see if she got pulled into the Olympics. Whether she was invited to the 2022 Olympics. She wasn't, so she took the gig, and she seemed to be absolutely loving it. Um, watching the players, writing up the reports. There's so many nice things that they say about her throughout this article. Just saying that she went through the full vetting process. She's got a hockey mind. Her IQ is right up there. She's just living. She's got all the skills, and they do make the point to say that she got the job fully on her own merit. That it's nothing to do with her being a woman or being from an indigenous background. It's solely on her skill base, which is
Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean,
just
certainly you look at the achievements there: silver medal, and then playing in 3 world championships as well.
yeah.
That's hockey chops if you needed them to prove why she's going to be so good for the game. One of the interesting things that actually I've just read in the piece there is that she joins a very small group of female NHL scouts. So you've got Cami Garanto, who works with the Seattle Kraken, Blake Bolden with the LA Kings, and then this is the interesting one, Megan Hunter, who also is a scout for the Blackhawks. So you've got to give the Blackhawks a little bit of credit on this one, that they are blazing a trail as far as bringing women into really, really important roles within the organization. I mean, your
Well,
scouts are where you're going to get your future talent. So fair play
there's a
to them.
really good quote. There's a really good quote from Stuart here saying that in his own words, we're looking for more diverse, just more opinions, more different people to bring into the fold here. So as you say, they are just looking to break the mold and to get the skills that they need.
Yep, absolutely.
Great story.
Fantastic. Great story.
So, great.
Guys, that throws us to the end of period 3, and would bring us on to the star segment. Right, confession time. It was Christmas week. Not even making an apology this time. The last poll didn't go out.
Well, it was supposed
I
to vote
do.
on Christmas Eve, and I don't even know. People were probably too drunk
Yep.
on turkey to be able to vote.
maybe not on Christmas Eve, but I'm going to make not even my excuses. I'm just going to tell you what I had to do on Christmas Eve. So Christmas Eve, I had to start doing all the prep on my own. I was left here in the house on my own. My wife hadn't even arrived in Scotland yet by this point. So I had to do all the prep for the next day.
Bless your cotton socks.
Then
Tiny
after all
villains.
that, I had to go pick her up from the airport, bring her home, make sure that she was fed. Bearing in mind that she's eating for two currently. So look, I'm not making excuses, but if I had to, I have a few. There was a point was made.
John, you do realise though now when you go back and listen to this episode, I will have added in some sad music over that. Nice
I hope so. I hope so. There was a point was made on Twitter. We put a tweet out tonight saying that we were going to be recording tonight, and Mark at HotDogPen67 once again. And it is worth noting that he did take the time and effort to nominate a star last time, which was, I don't even have to look back my notes. I remember this one. It was Marc-Andre Fleury for his, I believe, 600th career win.
Yep.
So he does make the point of, did I miss the Door 14 star vote? Question mark. And then, not impressed with this first hashtag. Sack John. I mean, look, Mark, you're not wrong, okay? But you're still a douchebag for saying it, okay? And then his second one was hashtag I win by default. Look, I can appreciate that because I'd be saying exactly the same thing. Do you know what? I think fair play to him. I think if we'd actually put this out, I feel like Fleury was going to win it anyway. I feel like we award Mark the star for that one.
Fair enough.
Good nomination and good bants afterwards.
And good hashtags.
And good hashtags. We like a good hashtag.
Hashtag Fire John. It's got a good name. It could be another episode title.
It could be. So, looking ahead to this time, guys, it's been quiet as far as hockey goes. We've had multiple cancellations of games, both here and elsewhere across the world. It probably comes as no surprise that we've maybe had our feet up for the last week and a half or so. We've been busy with Christmas. A couple of us are busy with kids, and all the rest of it. So, look, we don't have any nominations this time around. I feel like we're going to take the week off. I know I said it last time, and then all of a sudden people started coming up with nominations. I think this time we're definitely going to take the week off on the Stars competition. Everyone, take the New Year's off. Let's come back fresh in a couple of weeks, okay? Get your thinking caps on. Get to some games as long as they go ahead, and let's get some good nominations for 2 weeks' time, okay?
That'll do. So no D14 star segment this week. We do have one last segment, which we will just introduce as our overtime segment, though, before we finish off our show. So let me just cue up the music for that, or the little intro thingy, whatever they're called. Okay.
There's no music, Marty.
No, there's no music. There's just that little sound effect thing that goes on there. Guys, our overtime segment is just anything other than that fit. If it doesn't really fit in anywhere else, as well as any comments or questions that we get from Twitter. Nothing this week, but I did think we should finish off our episode this week, just by obviously, as we mentioned at the start of the show, it is the festive period. We are coming out of Christmas into the new year. And with that always comes new merchandise, new gifts, new presents, whatever that might be. So I'm going to throw it to you two. I'll also cover it, and we'll cover Dave's because we know he got something. We'll talk about his. Any good, I suppose, hockey themed or hockey related gifts this year as part of your Christmas presents? Aaron, we're going to go with you first. We know two of your presents, and I really like them.
We're gonna start high. We're gonna start on a high here.
Start high. So,
Starting
Aaron.
high. So if you do get a chance to go onto YouTube and you can actually watch, we'll put some pictures on the website, shall we?
Yeah.
But I have to put a big shout out to my sister, who is absolutely amazing, because you get asked questions. What do you want for Christmas? You're like, I'm alright. I've got everything I need. I'm fine. Well, she went out and found something that I didn't know that I needed,
but you clearly did.
But I clearly needed them. So these will take pride of place in the new house. I told my wife that they're going to be going in the kitchen or in the TV room. You can guess how that went.
Then you were told where they were actually going.
Yeah.
And then I got told where they were actually going to go. But what she was able to get me are two. I'm showing you the Flyers ones first. The Flyers logo, cut out in wood and painted. They're
Nice.
so
Class.
nice. So that's one.
Get rid of that
Oh,
one. Let's see the other
Get
one.
rid of that one. I'm starting off with this one because
Slow start.
the other
Come
one.
on.
the best one is this one.
That's a cracker.
That looks good. It does look good.
So what I'm holding is the Belfast Giants new logo, made in lovely wood, and it's proper 3D. It's like layered.
That's really good.
See that?
It's cool.
Yeah.
So it's a guy on Etsy. I haven't reached out to him yet because when I sent you the pictures on Christmas Day, I think I sent you them.
Yep.
And you were all like, "Oh my God, we need them." So when you go onto his Etsy site, he doesn't have the Giants logo there. He has a couple of. It's a guy called Hans. Hans. Very Christmas.
Hans Gruber.
I
Or,
know.
Someone spoke to Hans Gruber at Christmas.
or Hans from the Mighty Ducks series as well. You know,
Of course.
True.
rest in peace.
True.
Probably
Die.
not as famous a Christmas Hans as Hans Gruber, if I'm
No,
honest.
No.
But
Um,
more hockey related,
yeah.
certainly.
Is Hans Gruber from Die Hard?
You need a slap.
I
For
I
not
actually
knowing
didn't
that.
know what- I
It's
don't know
not
what to
Christmas
say to
until
you
you've
right
watched
now.
Die Hard.
It's not a Christmas movie, but okay. Continue.
What?
Continue.
Right, there's no star poll, but that's
I-
going straight up.
it's-
That's
I
the
don't-
title of the episode.
Act-
Die Hard's not a
I'm
Christmas
in-
movie. Watch the comments roll in.
I know, the most hated episode, but yes, sorry. So my sister went on his Etsy page, found lots. Has lots of NHL stuff, lots of movie and geek references, lots of Mario stuff, but they didn't have any of the local EHL stuff. So she messaged him saying, "Hey, do you do anything custom? Do you do requests? I've got a brother who's a Belfast Giants fan. Do you do Belfast Giants logos?" And he replied the best reply, knowing that she knew that he knew exactly what he was talking about. Which logo do you want? Do you want the old logo or do you want the new logo? And she was like, "You'll do me."
I have
And she
confidence
Gotta
in
love
you.
it.
Yeah.
You've got confidence, and you look at just how nice
It looks
it
good.
is.
It is good.
So-
It is good.
So we'll get some pictures and we'll get it put up on the website. That is you. In future podcasts, when I get into my new office, you will see that over my shoulder. I'm sure. on either
And
side.
also,
And that other one can go just right behind you.
I should also
right
say,
behind, so you can't see.
I should also say, let's not put up any information around his Etsy because Giants, please don't get him shut down because they've used your logo.
Would that be a
Yeah,
thing?
true. We'll not. Yeah, there's probably some kind of copyright.
Yeah.
Also, to be fair,
no.
if any company's going to shut them down, it's going to be the NHL, not the
I
Elite
was
League.
going to say he's got tons of NHL stuff. So he does.
Maybe he just changes certain colors so it's technically like fair use.
John, what about you? Any good merchandise this year?
Couple of merch things, nothing massive. So the wife got me a lovely new Belfast Giants T-shirt. I don't want to say that we settled for this one, but there were a number of other T-shirts were available on the Giants store. Now everyone knows because I've spoken about it on the podcast before that I'm not entirely taken. I'm not entirely taken with some of the merch that's available this year through the Giants, but I have to admit that the black and white wasn't one that I went for. I have the teal one, but black and white one I quite like. I have that one.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm wearing a teal
but
one
the-
today.
But the black and white one, it does pop. It's quite good. And I also have the new logo keyring because I said I needed a new keyring for the house keys for this place here. And also, everyone kind of knows that I have the pin badge hat, which hasn't really been to a game for a while, mostly because it was
No.
in a box for a while and it got kind of moldy, and I'm really scared about putting it through the wash machine. I feel like I don't know what a wash machine does when a lot of pin badges end up inside its sort of mechanism, and that's kind of what I'm worried about. But I got another pin badge, which
Right.
is the new Giants logo. It has to be said, it's the biggest pin badge I've ever seen in my life. They are, no joke, about 3 inches across. They are ginormous.
More of a brooch than a pin.
It's a medallion. It's a medallion like that. you're clearly, it's got 2 pins in the back of it. That's how big it is. So you're clearly supposed to put those on some kind of chain, like a bike chain, and wear that round your neck. It's jewelry, not a pin. But that's the only hockey related gear I got this year.
We know
My other key present is sitting in front of me there. You guys have seen it. Is my Lego Millennium Falcon, which love it.
Yeah, my main present. I didn't get any. I didn't get any hockey themed presents this year on actual Christmas Day, but I've got money. I was given money by my grandmother to go and buy my new hockey jersey, which I'm hopefully going to do tomorrow at the game tomorrow. I'm going to buy one. Still haven't decided yet, Joe, because I'm torn between 2 jerseys and I don't know whether I'm going to go for the full £120.
Let me guess. Hang on, we have to guess which one it is that he's going to go for. It's definitely the Teal Pro. That's one.
I don't know if I'm going to go for pro or not. That's what I'm saying.
I know.
Leave them to one side. I'm thinking teal is definitely one that you're considering. The fact that they then released the Challenge Cup jersey with the whited out logo and sponsors and stuff, that's, I'm guessing, the other one that you're looking at.
I'm looking at that one or the Pride jersey, which they released. I really like the Pride one.
Yes, okay, right.
So I might just, I know I won't get it for the Pride game, but I am considering the
Why
Pride
not
one.
both?
So I might get both instead of the Pro jersey because it'll cost the same amount. So that's
the Pro
that's
jersey
my,
was really. Dave got a Pro jersey, didn't he?
He did,
got it for the
and
last game.
it's good. Like the quality's really, like you can tell the quality's
Lovely.
great, and it's a great,
Yep.
it's a really great jersey. We were obviously touching Dave. It was either touching Dave or feeling Dave, whatever we wanted to call it. But we were checking the jersey's great quality, really good, and I think it's worth the money. I
Door
can't
14
buy it.
does not recommend touching Dave.
But yeah, so I don't know. Speaking of Dave, my other thing was also my main present for Christmas was also Lego this year. It was the I don't know if I sent a photograph of it or not, but I got the Harry Potter Lego. It's the Burrow from Harry Potter Lego. So
Is this now adding to your display that's on top of the piano?
Oh yeah. No, it's beside it now. It's now on a shelf.
Well, I was going to say it's not the. You could put the Burrow away from Hogwarts, which is on your piano, because clearly it's not part of Hogwarts.
It's a lot of Lego. But we know Dave got a new jersey as well. He got a Minnesota Wild jersey, I think.
Oh, this is the 3rd or 4th jersey that Dave has. We've mentioned about Dave's in this podcast.
Look,
Like how many?
outside of Oxo,
Isn't it?
Dave is a jersey library. Like let's be perfectly honest. Like if you wanted a Giants jersey, probably going back to the first season all the way through, there's probably only a handful of them that he doesn't have. I know that I bought, not my first one, but I think I've bought at least 3 jerseys from Dave over the years. Different ones. So the Rover MG one, I definitely bought from him.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the one that looks like the Rover MG one, but is from the year before, that doesn't have
Jam?
a whole... Is it? No, it's the one that doesn't have... It's got like shoulder sponsors and that's it. There's that one
Was it not,
as
was it
well.
not Jam? Was it not Jam written on the?
No,
on the
Gem
silver
was a
one?
couple of
Purple?
seasons later, I think.
I don't know.
I think I was here for Gem.
No, you weren't here for Gem.
Wasn't I?
No,
Maybe not.
definitely not.
Well, either way, yeah. Dave, the Jersey Library.
Yeah, he got I think it was a St. Paul,
He did.
a St. Paul, Minnesota jersey for Christmas from his
You say that
agent
like
wife.
it was new information for you.
I was going to say, I think. Did you not have a little?
You
bit
were
more of a-
integral.
I got a lot of messages this year. I got one from obviously from about Dave's present in relation to what about this player? What about this player? Do you think this player is better for this? And I was like, yep, go with this, or think about this. So I kind of advise on jerseys in terms of player names. And then for John's present, I got a text message from his sister-in-law being like, John said something about Lego that you have on display in the studio or somewhere. It's a Star Wars themed thing that he likes. What is it? And can you send me a link to whatever it is? So I was like, yep, here you go. So I sent her the link exactly where to buy it.
You
Like,
should've-
and also, if you go here, it's cheaper here, and it's your options here, here, and here. And she's like, oh, thank you for so many options. She's probably like, I didn't expect you to send me so much detail on Lego. But
Well,
You
thanks,
should've
because
sent
you've
the
now opened
bigger-
there you go.
you've now opened a complete can of worms. I'm already looking at the display stand for it, the lighting kit for it,
Lighting kit.
everything.
Yeah, I've currently got a lighting kit on its way for the for mine as well. And it does cost a significant amount of money, but
There's like
worth it.
they're like 40 or 50 quid.
Some are some are
I
priced
Some
have
are.
a
for
lighting
lighting kit.
kit. Yeah, I have a lighting kit somewhere for. I bought. My sister has the. I have the same one. No, I have the older version
Yeah.
than the one you have because you don't have the circle dish on the top of your Millennium Falcon. You have
I
the
do.
square dish.
I have the square one.
I have the circle, so I have the Last Jedi. This is turning into a Lego
Yeah,
podcast.
that's yeah.
We're two. I'm loving it, but we're 2 hours in, guys, and
Yeah,
it's a Lego podcast all
yeah.
of a sudden.
Let's change the subject back. Let's bring it back in. So that's this year's presents. If you got anything good, let us know, and you can do that by reaching out to us on social media, all different channels on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Door14Hockey. Let us know if you got anything good this year for Christmas or any good gifts. Also, come back to us if you have any good stories, anything we should talk about in future episodes. If you have any opinions or comments on the things that we've talked about in this episode, definitely let us know. We always like to hear from everybody in relation to what we've talked about. Check out previous episodes, all the content from this one, including the photographs of Aaron's beautiful Christmas gifts, we'll put up on our website at door14. It's door14hockey.com. And I think with that, that really takes us to the end of this week's episode. As usual, you can stream us in all the usual places you've listened to us, wherever it is you've listened to us today, but we're on all of the smart speakers. We're on YouTube now, so get on. You can watch the video and see our beautiful faces and see the things we're talking about. And more
You
importantly,
can see our faces. Let's not over
Yeah,
promise.
let's not oversell on that.
Some of us have beautiful some of us have beautiful faces. But
We're gonna
more
get taken
importantly-
down for false advertising.
more importantly, leave us a link or leave us a like or a comment or a review. It's really greatly appreciated and it'll help with the algorithm. So yeah, please do so. Al Gore's rhythm, no algorithm. No, sorry. With that, I'll sign off for this week. I'm Marty.
I'm John.
I'm Aaron.
Have a great week.